Welcome to the Rise Above podcast. I'm your host, Will Lambley.
And I'm your host, Cade Adams.
Today, we're joined by Baptist Collegiate Ministry Director Ryan Scantling. And first off, thank you for joining us today, Ryan.
Oh, dude, absolutely. I'm just honored to be on the Rise Above podcast.
Oh, yeah. So. Yeah, we're excited to have Ryan. I've known Ryan for about probably 2 years from October. A guy came to pick me up. I was going to speak at an event.
And I was that guy.
Yeah, and he was that guy. And I knew someone was coming to pick me up, but I thought that he knew I was blind. That's why he was coming to pick me up. But it turns out, I don't think Ryan knew I was blind.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So it was a shock to both of us. But and Ryan, first off, since you're the director of the Baptist Collegiate Ministry, most of our listeners are wondering, like, what is that? So first off, like, what is the Baptist Collegiate Ministry?
Sure, yeah. So BCM exists in most universities on the state, 700, well, actually about 900 universities throughout North America. Sponsored by local churches, but we're just a ministry to college campuses. And so up here, we do ministry at University of Arkansas, John Brown University, and Northwest Arkansas Community College. But I've been up here at the University of Arkansas doing Baptist Collegiate Ministry for 3 years. So,
wow. And then, so what is your what does your role look like at being the director?
Yeah, dude. So technically, I'm called the campus minister, but it looks like a lot of direction stuff. So I manage ministry here. We're a student-led ministry, which means I help recruit and lead students as they do ministry on campus. So we do weekly worship services at the University of Arkansas, but also at Siloam for John Brown on Tuesday nights. So we do Monday here in Fayetteville, Tuesday nights in Siloam, and then on Wednesdays we do kind of a lunch Bible study at NWAC. So kind of coordinating a lot of that, doing outreach events on campus, but also I serve to kind of resource and help churches in this area reach and engage college students.
Okay. And we'll get into a little more of it later, but I know 2 years ago, whenever you first got here, the BCM started to grow a little bit. But I know the year before that, when you came here, they only averaged about like 30 students. And
sure,
how many do we average like now?
Yeah, man, there's anywhere between 200, 250 in the room most nights at the University of Arkansas. But dude, that's just a drop in the bucket to what University of Arkansas has 31,000 students.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Campus, so.
And it just keeps growing every year, it seems like.
Yeah, thankful for what God's done. It's exciting stuff.
It's always been powerful. I mean, for me, especially moving here after being in Dallas, Texas. I mean, it was a world of difference. I mean,
sure.
I felt the Spirit first time I was in the room for BCM.
Our mission
first time I heard you
is
speak.
to give every student the opportunity to encounter Jesus and experience life. Like, we just believe that unless you've encountered Jesus, you can't really experience life. And there's tens of thousands of students at the University of Arkansas that I believe God's brought here for one reason, and that's to hear the good news of Jesus. And a lot of them will walk across the graduation stage or drop out before then, and will have never had the opportunity to encounter Jesus. And so, man, that's kind of what we're about and what we do. So
that's awesome.
We run really simple ministry, so we run really simple plays so that we can connect well and help students get connected to churches.
That's awesome. And we'll get back to a little more of what you're doing now later. But growing up, I know you're from Darnell, Arkansas, right?
That's it.
Yes.
Oh, the sand lizards.
Oh, yeah, the sand lizards.
The sand lizards in the nation.
Yeah. Growing up, what it looked like with you growing up, like with your family?
Yeah, so my parents divorced when I was 3, and that's actually what moved us to Dardanelle when I was 6 years old in first grade. I lived in rural Yell County, and so Yell County, interestingly enough, is one of the only the only county in the state of Arkansas that was an independent state for about 4 days. So they declared independence, and then the state militia said, no, this ain't going to happen. We're coming at you. And then they said, oh, never mind. So, but Yell County, we have a festival every year called the Free State of Yell Fest to celebrate those couple days of independence.
Oh, yeah. Wow. And then growing up, were you like always in the church? Because I know for me growing up, when I thought of like ministers or people in the ministry, I always thought of someone that was like always in the church.
Oh, sure. So like I said, I'm the son of divorced parents, and growing up, we didn't go to church at all, ever. And so I actually heard the good news of Jesus for the first time when an old lady knocked on my door and shared the gospel with my mom. And through the front door, I heard the conversation and like, there's something about that. So I went to church there soon after, and was saved.
That's
wow.
awesome.
So that was about 14-ish, somewhere around there. 14,
so young.
13, 14, something like that.
How do you think that changed the course of your life that you saw immediately thereafter?
Oh, dude, completely. Some of the folks that listen would relate to this. For us, growing up, like, the purpose in life was all about, like, more stuff, like more money. We weren't rich in, like, wealthy people's standards, but we were farm rich, if that makes sense.
I
So,
do.
yeah, you
That
probably,
does- that does make sense.
Farm rich means like you may live in a double wide trailer, but you got all the farm toys. So you got like 4-wheelers and the chicken houses, and you run the cattle and stuff. So we weren't rich, but we were farm rich, and so it was like all our life was spent just accumulating more stuff. And man, when I heard there was something different than that, it was just captivating to me and changed my life, changed my direction. I was really the first in my family to make a decision to trust Jesus, and thereafter it really changed kind of the trajectory of our whole family. So God just used it in a really cool way.
Okay.
That's awesome.
And it was a small church, man. Like if they ran 100 on a Sunday, that was huge. That did ministry to us there for a while. So I was one of about 4 to 6 kids in the youth ministry all through school, and through that, God just began giving me opportunities and called me to ministry. So.
Yeah, I can relate to that pretty heavily. I mean, that's pretty much the same exact way that I grew up. I mean, a small deal church in the in the middle of nowhere, and not far from Dardanelle.
Really?
You
Where
know,
so?
So it was like 20 minutes east of Mina.
Oh,
If
yeah.
that-
Oh, wow.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so like
That's
I
where
played.
they supposedly used to run the drug planes in.
Oh,
They
yeah,
landed in
yeah.
That's
Mina,
actually why I'm a
destroyed 'em.
pilot.
Yeah, He's like, I learned how to make some money.
No, yeah, and I just out of curiosity,
different podcast episode.
yeah, different episode. So, just out of curiosity, for you, did sin look different in that culture than it does up here?
Sure. Yeah.
That's something I think about often. Is like when I think about sin, we had a neighbor where I was growing up that like grew weed and like was an alcoholic and things of that nature, but you don't really see that up here because it's more city, and you see young people who are like kind of going wild. Do you get what I'm?
Man, I would say this. I've worked at several different universities doing and leading Baptist Collegiate Ministry. A University of Arkansas student often struggles with pride, and they don't realize it. But let me explain it a little bit. There is a high expectation on the lives of every student that goes to the U of A. On every student. I mean, they are probably the top of their class. They're smarter than most. So their parents have told them, you're going to be something big. You're going to have this powerful degree, get this big job. And so there's this expectation on their lives that I've got to be something. And, man, God oftentimes wants them to be that something and glorify Him in it. But to follow Jesus, you have to give up whatever your something is to follow Him. And so I would say up here, there's kind of a root of sometimes pride or this expectation, I got to be something big. And back home where I grew up, it was still pride, but it was a rural pride. Man, it was more like I'm an independent, like I'm doing my own thing. Like ain't nobody going to tell me what to do.
Yes.
And so I'm not going to have a God or any representative of God come tell me where I can drink, who I got to be, all that kind of stuff. And so, man, I think it goes back to the same root, but it manifests itself in different ways.
Yeah, that makes 100% sense to me. I like the way you put that.
Yeah, I get that. And then would you say like right after you heard about Christ for the first time when you were 14, would you say that like right then and there is when you felt like you were called to ministry, or was it kind of later on in your life where you're like, man, this is what I'm meant to do?
Yeah, those were pretty indiscernible to me. Like I knew that God had saved me, and soon after the only thing I knew about Christians was that they went and knocked on people's doors and shared the gospel.
Okay, yeah.
That's the people that shared the gospel with me. And so I signed up to start helping with that little small church's outreach team and all those things. I quit baseball. I wasn't very good at it, so it wasn't much of a sacrifice for me, but I quit playing baseball so I could go do that. And then soon after, God just began giving me opportunities, like to speak at youth group. Now, my youth group was only 6 people, so it wasn't a big deal. To like lead children's ministry, to help with stuff. And I just said, God, I kind of want to do this.
Yeah.
So I would say this. Some people talk about being called to ministry, and I probably more volunteered for ministry. Like, I really want to do this, God, if I can. So
Okay, that's awesome. And would you say that the people around you could tell a change in you during that time?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a bad kid. Like, I wasn't a 14-year-old drug head or anything. But I think the purpose and, like, the way I talked about stuff, it certainly changed. And, man, I you know how sometimes you look back at your younger years and you're like, that was cringy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, I was that cringy Christian kid that would, like, wear the John 3:16 bracelets and literally, like, you can customize your Nikes online. Like, I would get customized Nikes with, like, verses on them. Like, dude, I was that cringy Christian kid. And so I look back and I'm like, oh, gosh, that was way cringy. But that's how I knew how to live out my faith back then. I think I've grown up a lot and developed, and I don't have custom Nikes. I'm wearing On Clouds right now.
Hey, I am too. Yeah,
and they're not custom, but. Yeah, so I'm also a dad,
Yeah.
and you start caring a lot less when you're a dad.
And something about Ryan too is like Ryan's just the type of guy. He doesn't really care what other people think. He's just gonna do something if he likes it. Like in high school, weren't you the mascot?
Dude, I was.
Yeah.
So I played football. We were not very good. I played football and played soccer, and in between those was basketball season. And man, I just wanted to like hang out on the bus, travel with the team, but I was not good at basketball, so I couldn't play. And so I signed up to be the mascot, man, and I loved every minute of it.
And what was the mascot again?
The sand lizard. It looked like a big Barney costume, but it was red. So literally, like, I need to send you some pictures so that you can include it kind of in the notes or pop it up, but it was pretty incredible.
Yes, that would be
Lonnie
awesome.
the Lizard.
Oh,
I took it to new heights. The mascot program has never been the same since I was Lonnie the Lizard back at Dartmouth.
Wow.
Ryan Scantling, the Liz man.
My years were the Liz man.
The Liz
My years were
man.
like 2008 to 2000, well, maybe 7, 8, 9. So.
Okay. Wow. And then you have your own trampoline too.
Oh, dude, I did. So I would do trampoline, and I would attempt some flips and tricks. I was not very successful at them, so I didn't keep the trampoline on.
Okay.
There was this monster head on this thing. Like, it was big. So whenever you would jump, it would like it would almost give you a concussion. So when these professional football players are talking about concussions, I don't quite relate, but I feel like I could relate. So.
Yeah, I get that. And then after high school, as you were going into a new direction in your life, I know you went to Arkansas Tech, but did you always know you were going to Arkansas Tech, or was that something that just came about?
No, man. Actually, I was so hopeful that I would go to a school called Oklahoma Baptist.
Oh, yeah.
For no other reason than I had some friends going there, and I knew that that's where a lot of people that do ministry go, Oklahoma Baptist. And so I was planning to head there. I'd worked at a big summer camp the summer after my senior year of high school and met a lot of friends that were heading that direction. But then the summer after my senior year of high school, middle of July, my sister, who was 15 at the time, passed away. She woke up one morning, had a seizure, and was just gone. And I can remember it was actually a BCM director who drove me from that camp in South Oklahoma back home to Dardanelle, 5-hour drive. So my first really interaction with BCM was a BCM director just kind of lead me through that time. And I remember driving on the way thinking, yeah, there ain't no way I'm going to Oklahoma Baptist. Like, my sister just died, and I'm thinking about my family, thinking about my mom and my sister, because it was just my mom and my sister living at home then at that point after my sister had passed. And I'm like, I can't leave them by themselves. And so I went to Arkansas Tech. I lived on campus, but, man, that gave me the opportunity to be home a lot, and it's just about 25 minutes from the house. So, and I loved it.
Yeah, that's
Redneck
certainly
Tech, they call it.
Yeah,
So-
heck yeah, tech yeah is what my sister says.
A tree U. They have so many trees on campus.
Yes.
This is my favorite fact about Arkansas Tech. You know, a lot of universities have frat houses and stuff. At Tech, at least when I was there, they had frat fishing boats. So, man, like the frats, they would just get out on their fishing boats and have a good time. So the fishing team was the most successful team there when I was a student at Arkansas Tech.
I only went on that campus one time. I went there for band camp.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I think that, matter of fact, that might have been the day I said, I'm not going to college.
That's okay. Power to you.
Yeah. Whenever you got to Arkansas Tech, was there any organizations or anything that you got involved with?
So, when I decided that I was coming back to Russellville area, Dardanelle, my home church, Dardanelle First Baptist, the church that I'd kind of moved to after my mom and stepdad divorced. So I came to faith, Plainview First Baptist, then we moved to Dardanelle First Baptist, and they offered me a job. They said, hey, Ryan, we want you to come and be the youth intern since you're going to go to school here. I said, oh, that's awesome, man, that's cool. Like, I'll hang out with all my buddies, and yeah, it's going to be great. Well, after about 6 weeks, they told me, hey, you're not very good at this because there are more college students coming than youth, because all I knew was to invite college students to come and be a part of what God was doing in the youth ministry. And so then, after about 6 weeks, they changed my job and said, you're the college pastor. Dude, I didn't know what a college pastor was, anything like that. And so we started college ministry at that church. I was involved in BCM, Baptist Collegiate Ministry on campus, but we started college ministry. We called it Thrive because you use all those cheesy, things back then.
Yeah.
And man, it grew. Like, it went from me to about 60 students in the time that I was there, and then after that, I went and started working at UCA. So I graduated and then moved to Conway.
Wow, that's crazy. And how old were you when you first started leading this?
I was 18.
18,
So I just
wow.
graduated high school.
18,
Yep,
18 preaching to college.
Yeah, so 18, man, I was a college student, so I would just invite everybody, and like it was a good time.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So,
Wow, that's awesome. It reminds me a little bit of the verse which says, like, don't look down on anyone because they're young, but set an example for the believers.
Sure.
And it kind of reminds me, like, no matter how old we are, I feel like when I was younger, I always felt like, man, God can use me once I'm older, but the reality is, like, God can meet us right where we're at, and I think that's a perfect example.
Yeah, dude, I don't know. I just refuse to believe that I couldn't do something like that. Man, I learned a lot from doing things the wrong way, the right way. But I was just one of those guys that, man, I didn't really care to be that embarrassed. So I would walk up. I can remember, oh gosh, we didn't have any money. Like, the church didn't have a budget for college ministry because it just started. They just hired this young kid to do it. Yeah. And when I say hired, I mean like $150 a month. Like, not much money.
Okay.
And I printed these little blue cards. Like, I literally printed them on blue paper and cut them so they looked bad because it was an 18-year-old guy cutting these cards. And I just handed them out. I mean, thousands on campus. I mean, I plastered people's walls, slid them under dorm rooms because I was a student living in the dorm. And, man, some people came and got connected. And it was a really incredible thing because people had to drive by like 6 other great churches, 10, 12, however many, to come to our place. And it was just, I don't know, it was fun.
Wow, that's crazy. And whenever you first started doing that, did you think that, like, it would grow, or were you like, I don't know if it'll grow that much?
Man, I knew it would grow. Like, I just knew that there were a bunch of college students who weren't connected to church, who were either already Christians or college students who had come to faith. Like, man, Arkansas Tech is a small school now compared to University of Arkansas. I mean, it was probably 10,000 back then. And I just thought, 10,000. And I looked at all the churches and campus ministries, and I thought, maybe there's 900 involved in all these. And so I thought, dude, there's 9,100 students not going anywhere. So, yeah, this thing's going to grow.
That's awesome. And that's something I've really been able to take away from Ryan, him being around him a lot as I'm involved in the Baptist Collegiate Ministry at Arkansas, is just how he always believes, like, that it's always going to grow. He always has a plan for how much the ministry is going to grow. It reminds me of a verse in Mark where it says, anything is possible for one who believes. And it always brings me back to, like, high school football. Our coach will always tell us, like anything you're doing, like whether it's on the football field or in life, like, you don't even stand a chance if you don't believe. And that's something I've really thought has been impactful to me about Ryan. But
dude, so there's spiritual gifts. I don't have the gift of faith.
Yeah.
But man, I try to exercise as much as possible. Just believing that God can do bigger things than I even realize a lot. So
yeah, and that's one of the things as I recognized about you is like Romans 8:28 says, "For good things happen for those who love the Lord."
These boys spitting that scripture, man.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I noticed about you. You know, a lot of people say, I can tell he's a Christian because of the way he lives on life. Okay, so before I knew you were the campus minister, you know, I'm looking at this. I mean, even obviously after, because I had to know that you were responsible for that as much as God.
You're obviously a mid-30-year-old man, like, hanging out on college campus.
Not a student, right? So, like, I could tell that I saw those people there, and I felt the Holy Spirit the first time I walked in the BCM, and I mean, I could tell, like, you were someone who loved the Lord. And that's one of the things I've loved about it, and I love the BCM, and I think what you do here is phenomenal. I think what God does through you is
appreciate that. Insane. I do want to clarify for the listeners, though, I'm not mid-30s, I'm only 31.
Yeah, he's only 31. Yeah, he's a new dad. He's not
That's right. That's right. 7 months in.
Yeah, yep.
7 months in.
Yeah. So after high school, did you just know you wanted to be involved in the Baptist Collegiate Ministry, or was it just something that just came about?
The BCM at Arkansas Tech, man, was a special place. God had grown it. It was probably it was 400 students on a huge night. Like, it, man, and I had been invited some as like a senior in high school just to pop in and out. And so I would go, and one, there were really pretty girls there, and I thought, dude, this is a place I want to hang out. Secondly, it was just older people who were like, cool. You know, I was like a dweeb high school senior, and I went, and I'm like, dude, these folks are awesome. Like, I'm going to be here. And then, dude, it was just a worship service that was fully young adults, and I had never really experienced that. You know, I'd gone to churches where there were a bunch of gray-haired people, and I love gray-haired people, but it's just a different mix. Like, when you're like, oh, gosh, there's 400 people, like, that are my age, all pursuing the Lord. And so, I was just desperate to be involved, and I got involved, and it's great. So, Arkansas Tech, BCM has a great legacy, and I'm part of it.
Yeah, I can definitely attest. I definitely felt the same way when I started coming to the Arkansas Baptist Collegiate Ministry. I remember the thing that impressed me was like how many students were there worshiping Christ, and it was different from high school because a lot of times in high school, sometimes like kids' parents force them to go.
Sure.
That was how it was for me most of my life until I started losing my sight. But it was just powerful because I'm like, man, this is the type of people I need to surround myself with. And it really has helped my faith too over the past 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different mix in college when like you have to determine this is what I'm going to do with my life. Like, this is the direction I'm going to go. I'm going to make it a point to be here. So yeah, it's special.
Yeah, and yeah, I think there's something powerful too about like surrounding yourself around a bunch of people that aren't like living by like their parents or someone else's faith, but are making that faith their own and just owning it.
Sure, I'm giving you some internal lingo, but when I talk to other college ministry leaders, I talk about how our job is to reach lost students, but also to re-reach Christian students, because Christian students come to campus and they have to re-decide to follow Jesus. Now, I'm not making the salvation thing like they got to get re-saved or anything, but there's like a crossroads in your life where you got to be like, no, I'm going to take this really, really serious at this point in my life, and so our job is to really reach students and then re-reach Christian students. So,
yeah. And would you say that whenever you first like, what was it like whenever you first were introduced to like working for the BCM? Was it like right after college, or would it take a little bit?
So, of course, I worked for a church during college and was also kind of involved in BCM. And then after I graduated from Arkansas Tech, I graduated a semester early. My credits worked out that way. And they asked me to come on staff with them for a little bit. And I said yes before I found out the pay. If I found out the pay first, I probably would have said no.
Yeah.
So I said yes, and then I start, and they start paying me, and I'm like, oof, this is not great. So, and I start doing seminary from a distance. If you are watching the video, I'm a New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary grad, and so do that from a distance. And then after about 9 months, they asked me to come to Conway to lead Baptist Collegiate Ministry there. And I tell you, that was the biggest, up to that point in my life, probably the biggest faith decision outside of making the decision to trust Jesus, because I decided to leave something comfortable and go try something new. So I started there when I was 22.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's crazy. And whenever you got that offer in Conway, was like one of those things where you're like, man, this is where God's calling me?
I had a mentor who said this: God's everywhere, go where the money is. I'm joking,
okay.
but
I was like, man, this is crazy.
It was a group that said, hey, we want to pay you to come and do ministry, and we'll help pay for your seminary. And I'm like, this sounds pretty great. Yeah. And man, I'm passionate about college ministry, and I drove around the campuses in Conway at UCA, Hendrix College, and Central Baptist College, and I thought, man, this could be a great place to just invest for a while. And so I did, and I wound up spending 7 years there.
Oh, wow.
And got married while I was there.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah, great stuff.
That's awesome. And when you got to Conway, like, what were some of the differences you saw throughout like the years, like in the amount of students or like how the operation was run?
Sure, man. I think just being on the leadership side of things, like, it's different being a person involved in ministry and then being responsible for it. So I think the weight of that fell on me a lot of times. I'm really thankful for my supervisors and everything. They give me freedom to fail and try new things. And yeah, I just learned a lot more about how to do ministry and how to structure it. You say, well, that's easy. You just go and talk to people about God. Yeah, but they're also like best practices. Like, okay, I do these things in these ways, and you kind of build a philosophy of what you believe about who God is and how to do ministry. So I got to develop that a lot.
Yeah.
In seminary, is it like, does everyone develop, obviously we have the same core belief, But does everyone develop kind of their own theological standpoint? Like, did you notice in between you and some of your classmates that there were some theological differences as far as the Bible went?
So I'm Baptist, and a lot of people have asked me through the years, "Oh, why are you Baptist?" I'm Baptist because it was Baptist people who reached me with the gospel, and the more I explored being Baptist, I'm like, seemed pretty legit to me.
Yeah.
And so in seminary is just an opportunity to kind of explore, delve deeper, and really be guided by some professors and things who helped me answer questions of faith so that I could be better equipped to do ministry with others. There are people who have different views of theology, but I would say this. Within Christianity, there are essentials, and then there are a lot of non-essentials. And so most of the things that people would disagree on in seminary, well, let me say it this way. You're not going to seminary unless you love Jesus and want to follow him. I mean, it's very rare that you would do that. And so most of the things that people would disagree on were like really non-essential things.
Right.
Like an example, after a person comes to faith, should we baptize them immediately or should we start the process of discipleship and then baptize them? Man, that's not an essential thing. But people would get in arguments about that kind of stuff.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And
it was not like arguments like, oh, I hate you. It was like, bantering back and forth. So.
Right. Well, and it's like, it was making me think of one of the sermons you had a few nights ago at the BCM. One that's stuck with me is where you talked about the grace versus truth.
Well, I hope it sticks. It's only been a couple nights. So.
Well, no, that was like
that was months.
Yeah, that was like
ago.
it was like a month ago. But that one, and then I came after you afterwards, and I told you about I had given a similar thing to like coworkers or people in my life, that there's a good balance between theology and spirituality. And so it's like I've never experienced seminary, so it's like, are all these people on the same level as far as that goes?
Yeah, that's a really good thing. Like, our culture's in a weird spot with truth and grace right now. They want to put Christians in they really want to shoehorn Christians into a place and say, if you believe the Bible, you have to hate me because of the sin in my life. Or if you believe the Bible, and you have to love me and accept me because that's what you're supposed to be. And the Bible doesn't really give us any option. Like, we're supposed to be truthful, but we're also supposed to show grace. So we love everybody. We don't hate anybody as Christians. But also, man, we can't love and embrace any sin. Like, we just can't do that as Christians.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people try to pigeonhole us in one way or the other. And the Bible doesn't give us either option.
Yep. Yeah, and going off that, I know when you started in Conway, you're only 22 years old.
Sure.
So, and you new to like leading ministry.
Yeah.
So was there times at first maybe where you felt like you failed at something and you're like, man, God, is this really what you want me to do?
Yeah. But I would say this. There were times when other people told me I failed at things without me even realizing it. I think the thing that I've learned in starting in new places in ministry is it always comes with criticism. Some of it's fair. Like, some of it is because I make mistakes and do dumb things and get criticized for it. And some of it is just people, you criticize things that you don't know. And, man, it's really easy for me to criticize a coach on a sideline that I don't have a personal relationship with. We're Arkansas fans. We've heard a lot of that all our lives. Man, it's just really easy to criticize things you don't know and understand. And so I would say this, any new place that I've started doing ministry and leading, there's always been a fair bit of criticism, and that's been difficult.
Yeah, I get that, especially like over the past couple of years as I've built like some relationships with different like players or coaches with the Arkansas football team. I'll like hear people say bad stuff about them, and I'm like, man, I can never talk bad about that person because like how good they've been to me.
Because you know
so,
them.
Yeah,
exactly.
And,
I mean, it changes when you have a relationship. That's kind of the hard thing about our world now is, man, everybody is a person, but everybody is also a public persona. You know, even you guys, like, y'all got Instagram accounts that people can know you from a distance, and so they can lob criticisms at you without it having any personal impact on them, you know? Like, they don't have to sit across from you, Will, and say, bro, your breath stinks right now. It doesn't stink right now that I know of. But they could post that on your Instagram and not have to sit across from you and you answer for it, you know, and have the relationship with you. So it's really a difficult thing to navigate through.
Yeah, and I would say something that I know has helped me out a lot through just kind of like not listening to outside voices is just trusting in God and like knowing Scripture. I know like Proverbs 3:5-6 was what I talked about last week with Isaac about trusting the Lord with all your heart, leaning not on your own understandings, acknowledging Him in all your ways, and He will make your path straight. Has there been some like verses or different like passages that have helped you like just with where your hope comes from?
Sure. Acts 20:24 is my life verse. So when I talk about the verses I would have on my shoes in high school, it was Acts 20:24. And it says, "But I count my life of no value to myself, so that I may finish my course in the ministry I received from the Lord Jesus to testify to the gospel of God's grace." And man, that just means like, dude, my life doesn't mean as much to me as it does to Jesus. Like, I don't value the things I can do, the things I can accomplish. I value the things that God can do through me. And it changes your perspective. Like when criticism comes, when naysayers are apparent, it makes your heart for them grow rather than just thinking, oh, what does this mean for me, you know?
Yeah. I think that's awesome and a great verse to hold on to, because I know pastors or people in ministry are like the easiest people to criticize, because everything you could criticize. Oh, the music should be different.
I don't know. I hope politicians are easier to criticize.
Okay, hopefully, yeah.
But you are on a pedestal like them. I mean, it's
dude.
Almost just similar.
But I would say
Everybody's
this.
just looking for you to fail.
I would say this. Well, here's the hard thing about society right now. People love failure. Like,
Yes.
what is it
Yeah.
about when a person
Yes.
falls? People love just rubbing their nose in it. It's like, I don't know if you guys have ever had a dog. Will Walker's behind the camera right now. He's getting a dog this weekend. And Will thinks he can train this dog, care for this dog, all this stuff. Like when a dog poops, sometimes people say, oh, the best way to train is rub their nose in it, make them know they made a mistake. I don't know what it is about our society that loves pointing out our mistakes and flaws. Everybody's got them. Like, we don't have to dwell on them.
Yeah, and you even talked about that in another sermon. You talked about how we focus on the negatives more than we do the positives.
Maybe I just need to get new material.
Yeah. No, man, no, I don't think you do. I think
Yeah.
your stuff is just so good that it's worth bringing up.
Yeah, I think Cade's remember better than I do too.
That's fair. That's fair.
It's memorable nights because I don't get to come that often because
Sure.
work.
Yeah, yep. But as we kind of transition, so you were at Conway for 7 years.
I was, yep.
And then when you were ending there, was God just put on your heart to go somewhere else, or did the opportunity just come up?
Man, there were a couple things, situations, not difficult, good or bad, but that I felt like God was pushing me to the next thing, but I was just waiting on the pull for what the next thing was. I think a lot of times when God leads you, there's a push and a pull, like a push away from a place, but a pull to another place. And I'd felt like for maybe 6 or 9 months, okay, there's a push. Like, I don't know what it is. I just feel like I'm done here. Like, I just felt a sense of completion. I would liken it for college students or high school students listening to when you're about to cross the graduation stage. Like, it's not an option for you to stay in college or high school anymore. You may have loved it, but there's a push away from that. And so for me, it was like, there's a push away. I don't know what it was, but then finally there was a pull, like God provided the next thing, and it was very clear, hey, we're going to come to Northwest Arkansas and lead ministry here. So, and we knew there were some challenges ahead. I mean, the ministry's coming out of COVID, those kind of things. And so, it's always hard to transition, but God worked through it.
Yeah, I know right before you became the college minister, that was like during like the peak of the COVID season, like in 2020, 2021.
Sure, yeah.
So as you were preparing, like what was kind of your mindset coming into here?
Man, I really felt like it, as much as COVID gave opportunities for incredible ministry, COVID also wiped the slate clean in a lot of ways, which is ironic because COVID is not a clean thing. But COVID wiped the slate clean so that we could try new things, dream new dreams, like really get back to focusing on what do we need to do to reach a campus. And there were a lot of things that we had been trying here before me that, man, COVID just killed. Like COVID killed the opportunity to do Bible studies in dorms consistently. And so because of that, it's like, all right, we're going to shift. Like COVID made us shift, but we're going to be intentional about shifting. So
Awesome. Yeah, and I know there's many people listening to this podcast that are leaders or trying to lead a group, a team, or are leaders on their team. And, they want to have a great team in whatever aspect they consider great as, but they don't really know like where to go. And something that I've really, something that's really impressed me about Ryan is just his vision and his ability to have like a bold vision. And there's a verse in Proverbs which says, when there is no vision, the men will fail. So what's kind of like been your vision for the BCM ever since you became the director?
Man, I just legitimately believe that the college campus is the most strategic mission field on earth. So a person can support missionaries all over the world. But I believe if you support somebody to do ministry on a college campus, you have the opportunity to affect more of the world than ever. People are only here 4 years, so, well, unless it takes one of you guys or somebody longer to finish school, you're only here for a defined amount of time. We get the best of the best, especially at the University of Arkansas. We get the best leaders in our state and in other states and across the world. They come here, have the opportunity to hear the gospel, and then take it back home, wherever God lands them next. And so I just believe it's that strategic. It's so strategic that we shouldn't give up on it.
Yep.
That's awesome.
That's
College campuses have bad raps, for like, oh, people party there. That's all a bunch of, whether you're conservative or liberal, people are like, oh, it's a bunch of liberals. Nobody really accuses college campuses of being, oh, it's a bunch of conservatives for some reason. But yeah, people say that about college campuses. It's like, yeah, but also, man, this is the place where people are at their most formative years. 18 to 22, you make more decisions that impact the rest of your life than ever before or ever after. And so why wouldn't you want God and people doing ministry on behalf of God right in the middle of that?
Yes. And that's something that runs through my head a lot is like some of the decisions I make like are life decisions. Like they are life altering things. I mean, just even the decision to move here. I mean, I finished flight school. I could have gone anywhere in this country.
Sure.
And I'm glad I chose Fayetteville, but it's I feel like a lot of people in our generation fail to see that what they're doing right now, it matters.
There's a difference in decisions and choices. I don't know if you knew this, but the root word for choice means that you can return and choose again. So think, I go and choose ice cream. Like today I choose vanilla, tomorrow I choose chocolate. My choice today has no bearing on my choice tomorrow. A decision cuts off future options. So when you say I've decided to do something, it means that other things are no longer options for you. When I decided to marry my wife, it meant no other woman was an option for me. When I decided to follow Jesus, there's an old hymn that says, I have decided, no turning back, no turning back. None go with me, I still will follow. And so, this age range, 18 to 22, college years, you make more decisions that affect the rest of your life than ever before.
Right. And we're looking at now we're just seeing decisions, especially in our generation, and coming up with the younger one that have we've never even seen before. These are life-altering decisions that are now, just coming up and around, and it's like, why add to the problems of a young society?
I think it's unfair to younger people.
Yes.
Like, never has a person had to make the decision about sexuality in their young years, but now society pressures that. Never have they had to make determined stands in a very public manner, because let's be honest, most 16-year-olds and younger have social media, so when they say things and make public stances, dude, it's there forever.
Yep.
So the pressure is high, and that's why anxiety is high.
Yep.
The pressure's up, so anxiety's up. That's why, again, Will Walker behind the lens is, he's studying to be able to impact that kind of stuff. So.
Yep, it takes one. We definitely need it, but especially with anxiety so high. That's something I've loved about the BCM is, for me, it seems almost like a when I go to the BCM, it seems like I can just forget about everything going on, because I should have a bunch of people around me that are just gonna love me and pour Jesus into me, and I don't have to worry about anything else. And that's something that I've really taken away more than anything. And can you kind of speak to kind of the culture that you've tried to create in the BCM?
Yeah, dude, community is important. And you're never absent from community. Even if it's just you in community, that's a lonely community, but it's a community in and of itself. And so community is important. And so during these crucial years, man, we got to be around the right people to help inform our decisions. In Psalm 1, it talks about community. It says, how happy is the man who does not do a couple things. How happy is the man who does not walk, stand, sit. How happy is the man who does not walk in the advice of the wicked, or stand amongst the scoffers, or sit in the seat of evildoers. Instead, his delight is in the Lord's instruction. And so it talks about community. If he's around these people, dude, he's not happy. But instead, his delight is in the Lord's instruction. So being around and filling your life with the right things makes a significant impact.
Yeah, it definitely helps. Like, I know you can testify to this, but like when you're going through a hard time and you have people around you that like are gonna love you, but are also gonna like keep you accountable if you've messed up.
Sure.
Because I know in my life, there's been so many friends that like when I've made a decision I shouldn't have, that have told me like, man, why'd you do that? But I also knew those were the people that like when I did something good, were gonna like be the first ones to encourage me, and that's just made such a huge difference.
It's good.
And then, and moving forward at Arkansas, is there like some like goals you have every year for like the BCM or just like for yourself?
That's a really good question. Like, one, you've always got to be replicating yourself, like finding new people and investing. The college campus changes drastically every year. I mean, there's at the University of Arkansas 7,000 plus new freshmen every fall. And so that means our mission field, like our ministry, is constantly changing. So we got to be alert. We got to be attentive. We got to keep engaging. You can't take a month or a week or a year off, because if not, your opportunity to do ministry with a group of people dies. And so, man, I think just stay alert, stay vigilant, but also, keep our eyes to what God may be doing. Henry Blackaby wrote a book called Desiring God, and he said, the biggest key is finding where God's at work and getting in on it. And so, man, I just try to keep my ear to the ground. Where is God moving? And then trying to be a part of that.
Yep, that's awesome.
You talked about leadership development and like team stuff earlier. Man, my role, I feel like, is sometimes easy. I just try to find the people that God seems to be doing work in, and I just try to give them a platform by which to do what God's doing. Like, if I can just identify the people that God is working in, and that are, sometimes they use the FAT acronym, faithful, available, teachable, then you just elevate those people, and God seems to do great things.
That's awesome. And it reminds me of something our high school football coach at my school, Rejoice Christian, used to always tell us. He would say, our job as coaches is to love you guys, and your job as players is to love each other. And I think Ryan has done a great job of that.
But what about winning games?
Yeah. That's important too. But you can't win games if you don't love each other.
That's fair.
Yeah, unless you're just playing teams like the School of the Blind or something like
All
that.
about
Don't want to diss the blind community. But,
Okay.
But yeah, no, I think just Ryan as a leader has done a great job of not trying to control everything, but developing leaders, because I know that's been a crucial thing.
Dude, sometimes in like organizations, BCM is an organization like everybody else. Like, there are groups of people, factions of people who hang out with each other more than others and things. Sometimes I feel like one of my greatest roles is just to keep everybody moving forward on the same boat. Like, you don't have to be on the same side of the boat and agree about the planks in the boat and what color they should be. But let's just keep on the same boat and keep moving forward and at least churning the rows in the right direction. So.
Yeah. You're very supportive of your groups too. I mean, you're the reason we all went to Asbury, pretty much. I mean, you guys provided the way through the BCM.
It's good, man. I just felt like God was doing something special, and
He was.
If I could have been in on it, I would have loved to. But we had a baby girl that week.
Yeah. That's when he became a dad.
That's right.
Yeah.
And like, so, you remember, I guess, did you ever go to a church camp when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you remember at church camp when you like felt the Holy Spirit, but then it was always, I think it was called like the camp fizzle, whereas like the week after it kind of just went away.
A lot of people talk about the camp high and coming down from
the camp high.
Sure,
yes.
Sure.
Asbury University, it was almost like the quote unquote camp high, but it didn't end. It's that one experience I've had where it's like the Holy Spirit has been fully involved in my life since that moment.
Wow.
Since that moment, and that's where I found my salvation.
Dude, I'm telling you, what you're talking about is revival. When God revives the heart of a Christian, like it changes how they see things, what they do, and the imprint of revival stays on a person's life the rest of their life.
Yes.
And it impacts how they relate to each other, all those kind of things. And dude, this is just something I've been praying for, longing for. Like, I'm passionate about revival, spiritual awakening. Mm-hmm. When God revives people and they get their relationship right with the Lord, their relationship with other people starts becoming right. And man, when that happens, like, it's explosive. It's explosive. There are things that kill revival too. Sin in our life, selfishness, an unwillingness to yield to what God wants. So yeah, we just got to constantly be examining God. What what could be keeping me from revival right now?
Yeah, that's awesome. And that goes right into what our podcast is called and what our podcast is all about, being the Rise Above podcast. What it comes down to is in life, like everyone's going to face a storm, but there's two types of people. There's a type of person when storms come, they just are like a buffalo and they go the other way. Or there's
like
people when storms come, they're like an eagle and they rise above the storm. Oh, yeah. And Ryan, can you share with us a time in your life where
you ever just look at a person and say you're a buffalo?
Yeah, no.
I don't think that would go off very well.
He talked about it in our first episodes from his high school football coach.
Yeah, right. But
Well, sorry, I interrupted you. The buffalo thing caught me off guard.
No. But he always used the example because like when buffaloes face a storm, they go the other way.
Okay.
But then when eagles come across the storm, they rise above the storm.
Yeah.
And so, like, when's a time in your life where, like, man, the storm was brutal, but you were able to rise above whatever the storm was, and like, what were you able to use to help rise above it?
Man, I think there's been a lot of seasons. I think the best leaders are defined by difficult seasons in their life. And that's when kind of what God's done in your life is really proven. There's been countless stuff, like times where criticism seemed insurmountable, or times where faced loss, death of my sister, difficulty. I'm going to quote JFK, and it's interesting. JFK, while he was fighting communism across the world, he said, "Conformity is the jailer of freedom and the enemy of growth." And man, I really believe that to be true. Like, in fact, in Romans chapter 12, it says, "Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed." Like, what JFK was talking about, like, if we conform and become like the rest of these communist countries, like, man, we're just going to stifle what's ahead. But I think it's true in our life. Like, if you conform and when the wind's pressing against you, you just say, okay, I'm going to go along with the crowd. And you just are beaten and tattered by whatever comes up, then, man, you're really shutting off growth for your life. And so he said, conformity is the jailer of freedom and the enemy of growth. I don't think JFK knew how wise that statement was. But it's true, man. Like, rising above means you don't conform and you let God transform whatever situation into whatever he wants to do. I think that's right. Like when you're chastised, when you're criticized, conformity would be just jumping in the fight and, laying blows on the opposition. You don't do that. Like you let God handle the situation. Conformity in difficult times would be kicking the rocks, saying, "God, you're done with me now. Like I can't possibly get through this." Well, transformation is, "God, what do you have in this? Like, what do you have in this for me? How are you going to lead me through this?" So I think transformation rather than conformity.
What advice would you give to someone who is conforming and they're in that spot where they just feel like God's kind of left them there to I'd say spiritually die is the way we'll put it. How would you give them advice to come back from that?
Man, I think people have to see the situation they're in. Like, when you land in a ditch spiritually or mentally, physically, when you land in the ditch, the only way to get out of that ditch is go to the place you got in it and get back up. Yeah. Like if you drive your truck off in a ditch, then you got to have a tow truck go to that exact spot you drove it off and get it back up on the road. Now, it may be destroyed. Like when you land your life in a ditch, there's some destruction that comes, some pain, some hardships, all those things. But you got to get back on the road and get going again. Like you can't just stay in the ditch and stay in the mud and the wreckage and expect for things to change for the better. You know? Jesus didn't leave us in a ditch. In Colossians 1, it says he rescued us from the domain of darkness. Now, that sounds like a ditch to me.
Yeah.
Like a really deep, terrible ditch. And transferred us into the kingdom of the Son that he loves. So he literally is the one that picks us out of the ditch and moves us on. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, one of the things I like to say is, even like to myself whenever I'm going through something, is no matter how empty you are, you'll never be as empty as the grave is. Because that grave will always be more empty than you could ever
profound.
be.
Yeah. Profound.
So that's a song. That's not what it says, but I saw that and that's what I thought of.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's kind of like my life motto.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and in those times in your life when it's been hard to rise above, what is the thing what's your why in those times that keeps you getting up every day?
I say people who come to BCM here probably get tired of hearing it, but I say a lot, and a lot of it's a reminder to myself that God has a bigger plan and purpose for your life than you could ever dream up for yourself. And I say that as much to people, but to remind myself of that, man, because he does. Like, whatever plan you think you got worked out, God's got a bigger one. He's got bigger purposes behind everything. He's placed you exactly where you are for a particular reason, for this particular season, so that he can do something with it. And so yeah, that's my why. Like, God's doing something bigger than I can perceive, and I won't always see it. You never know what lays on the other side of your faithfulness and obedience. I won't always see what it is, but hopefully I can see a glimpse that will keep me going until I die.
That's awesome. And it reminds me of in Ephesians 3 where it says, Christ can do immeasurably more than we could ever think or imagine. And I know anyone listening to this, there's been a time where you were thinking, man, why is this happening? Or why am I going through this? But I'll tell you this, in times where me, Ryan, Cade, we face hard times, those times we've trusted in God, there's been moments where we've been like, man, I didn't even know like I could do this. And in those times, it's Christ working through us. I know for me, when I started at the University of Arkansas, like trying to navigate around the campus, being blind, I was like, I don't even know how I'm going to do this. And there's even days where I think like, this just doesn't seem fair. But by trusting in Christ every day, like we talked about last week in Luke 9, by taking up your cross daily, man, Christ will do immeasurably more. And just like Ryan said, like you might not always be able to see it, but that's where faith comes in hand, and knowing that he has a plan despite what you're dealing with in the moment. And just there's so much power in showing up every day and just remembering like what is your why, and making it about something greater than you and a relationship with Christ. And that leads us into our last question, Ryan. There's going to be someone listening to this today or watching it on YouTube who just got that diagnosis, or is having an issue in their family, or just feels stuck in life. Maybe it's something big or small, but they don't even know where to start on how to even rise above. What would your message be to that person?
I would say there's an experience that people expect of you, if you got that bad news or the difficult things going on, and people expect you to be somber, to think, woe is me. But you can conform and do what everybody expects of you, or you can set your sights on what God has. And it doesn't mean things get better. My least favorite promise in Scripture, Jesus said, in this life you will face trouble. And just be honest, that sucks. Like, that's not a good thing. Mm-hmm. But he says, be courageous, for I have overcome the world. And so your confidence not in your situation, it's in what Jesus did and can do through you. It doesn't mean it ends well. Like, all our lives are not going to end well. We're going to die.
Yeah.
But then, man, there's going to be an incredible heaven that we set our sights on. And so, yeah, it doesn't mean it ends well here or this situation, but there's a better thing coming. And that's really good.
Yes, yes. Awesome. That's great right there. As Ryan said in John 16, verse 33, in this life we will face tribulations, but take heart. Jesus has overcame this world. And remember that as you're listening to this podcast and as you go throughout this week, whatever you face, it might be harder than anything any of us could imagine. And maybe on this earth, you might not be able to take away that adversity, but despite whatever you're facing, there is hope beyond this earth. And remember that as you go throughout this week. And man, we can't thank Ryan enough for being on the podcast today. I know he had a busy schedule and had to roll in here straight from Russellville. And but yeah, we thank everyone for tuning in today. And is there anything else you want to say, Cade?
Yeah, Ryan, thanks for coming on. I think that was a blast. So I enjoyed having you on. I know Will did.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And guys, no matter the storms coming in your life, you can always rise above.
See ya.